we kick it. We have some wine. We have a good time, and I think it's like our moment to just not take anything seriously and just have fun. I think that's why I loved doing the show for so long, because it's like a place where I could just be myself.
Today we're chatting with Stefanie Maegan. She's a professional podcast producer and the self-proclaimed serial dater host of Broke Girl Therapy, where she invites her friends, ex-boyfriends, and dates to open up about relationship topics that everyone else is too scared to talk about. Thanks for coming on the show, Stefanie. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing this at 8 a.m. just for you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been on East Coast time this past few months, and sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I'm excited to be here.
Before we dive into podcasting, let's go over your craziest dating story that someone's ever shared on your show.
Someone dated a criminal, and he had a whole different identity, and she was falling in love with him. Yes, and she was falling in love with him, and then soon to realize that he had a record and his name was incorrect, and he just got out of jail, and that's why he ghosted her. So it was a mess. So I pretty much had to give it to her on the podcast, saying it's not worth it. Please,
oh my God,
take care of yourself. So, I think that's by far the craziest. I was not expecting to get something like that.
It's like you in real life.
Right.
Oh my God. That's crazy. Okay. So you're a professional podcast producer. You work for Pod People.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your journey in podcasting, and I'll let you pick whether you want to begin with Broke Girl Therapy or Pod People. But I really want to get to know you as a podcast producer. Where did you start? Why did you start? And what do you love so much about the podcast industry?
Yeah, so I, completely self-taught. I started my podcast in 2016 and just thought, oh, this would be fun to do. And then realized it was so much work, but I loved it. Everything was, completely self-taught. YouTube has been such a huge, teacher for me in the industry. So I fell in love with it. And just as time went on, I just continuously, even if the audio was bad, I still just tried to invest. I tried to learn. And I just, did everything from social media to editing to recording engineer to, all aspect. But I felt like it was fun to do because it was my way of expressing myself. So yeah, that's kind of how I started and, why I still am in this industry. And I was working in fashion before and realized that I hated that and got into podcasting. It wasn't even something I strived to do ever since I was a kid because podcasting wasn't around. It just, I really fell in love with it because it was my therapy.
And the show from 2016, is this still Broke Girl Therapy? Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So when did Pod People come into the mix?
Yeah, so Pod People came in the mix actually earlier this year. And they hired me on as a producer and was what they call matchmaker. And no, I don't set people up for relationships and dates and stuff, although I am really good at that. So we'll talk about that some other time. But I help people get jobs for all different types of productions. And I'm also co-producing our internal podcast. So I'm helping out with that. And that's just kind of because for me, I've only really done my projects. I've done Broke Girl Therapy. I have a kind of a spin-off show with one of our guests that always comes on the show, and she's the fan favorite. It's called The Art Teacher. So I'm also doing that for her as well. But for Pod People, I'm working on the internal podcast. I also was an associate producer for a Vogue podcast because that was something that we were producing in-house. And yeah, I'm still honestly, I'm still learning because I just really, start off in my own show, but because I built it up to where it is now, Pod People really believed in me to have me be part, of their team to help me shape, me to be a better producer.
The transition from fashion and design to podcasting is definitely a leap. And I feel like this past year, especially, people have really been thinking about how they could change their careers. And I think it's interesting how you were able to sort of parlay your experience hosting your own show for nearly 6 years now into a full-time job with a pretty cool company. What would you recommend somebody listening who might have like a hobbyist show of their own. Maybe it's like really small, it hasn't really grown or has reached the point of getting sponsorships. How can they leverage that experience into more opportunities?
Yeah, I say, like be super consistent with your show. I think because I put so much love and passion for my show, that other people were wanting me to help out with theirs. So I think, stay consistent with your show, but then also try to reach out to other shows and be like, do you need any like assistants, interns, associate producer? Like, I think just diving in and then having your show and seeing all the work that you've done, have that be like, okay, a reflection of what you're capable of doing. Like, even if it's super small and you only get like 50 listeners or 5 listeners, I don't know, maybe I was like slightly delusional, told myself this is a huge, big show, even though it was like 5 people were listening. And I really tried to make it bigger than it actually was. And because I put a lot of effort into editing to video and to promoting. And then it just kind of manifested into what it is now.
So, what would you say has been your biggest podcast achievement in these past few years?
I would say getting on the charts for society and culture. I believe I was up to like 53, which is like,
Nice.
okay, 53, but I don't have a network. Like, was like next to all these shows that have like a network to back them up. I didn't have that. So I was like, holy shit. I like did that on my own. And then also getting, 171,000 followers on TikTok. And that's what really drove, people to listen to the show.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about that because that's something we're seeing working too, even for our company show, which is like super niche, like teaching podcasting to podcasters. Our like short form clips are performing like 100x more than the long form videos. So let's talk about how are you creating these TikTok clips? Could you break down like what your process is? Like how do you pick which content to pull, and then how are you formatting it? And is there any like special growth hacks or tricks?
Yeah, I will, I did this even before TikTok even became a thing. Just because I was, telling people on my Instagram of my loyal 500 followers, like, hey, new podcast episode out. But I felt like our generation is so visual. So I just started taking clips and would just, cut, all these really interesting sound bites that would make you want to listen to the whole thing. Sometimes they have a little bit of a cliffhanger, and sometimes it's like so explicit that you're like, what? Like, I need to hear more, And so when TikTok came about in 2020, I wasn't really thinking. I was like, let me just I'm not going to do a savage dance. So let me just put up these clips that I've been editing the past 3 years, and I put it up, and that's how it went viral. And I realized, oh, it's really like, I think because TikTok, you could easily scroll through. It's like the first second has to be super ear grabbing, eye grabbing, whatever just because our attention span is so like down to like 5 seconds, even if that. But yeah, I just try to make the first sentence, the first word be like, wait, I need to stay here and see what else is going to happen in this clip. And it's also with TikTok, things are changing. So I'm always trying different things. I think, the captions I put, like, is it super engaging? Like, for instance, I put, this might be a little explicit, but I'll try to keep it PG. How long, how many times a week should you have sex? and and then that kind of created people to be like, oh no, I need this every day. Oh no, once a week is fine. Or like, ooh, so they start engaging, therefore it keeps it going into the algorithm. So just doing stuff like that to engage with my followers has been really like helpful for me.
Yeah, I feel like the engagement piece is definitely what's missing from a lot of people's strategy. Even if it isn't like a sex and dating show, what are some of the things that we can be doing on TikTok and IG Reels, YouTube Shorts, and stuff to help drive that engagement?
I mean, yeah, it doesn't always have to be so eye-grabbing or like scandalous. Like it could definitely just be, I think people what, their algorithm is something that pertains to them. So it feels personal to them. So I think just putting something that they feel like they can relate to and they can engage on, even if it has nothing to do with dating or whatever, but everything that shows on their For You page is something TikTok is like, hey, this is for you. So therefore, putting a caption that you feel like someone could really want to put their 2 cents in.
And are you doing anything to help drive the traffic over? Is there like an in card, or like I assume you have like a link in the bio, but what are you doing to help convert the TikTok viewers into podcast listeners?
So I always put in my comments like Brocal Therapy Podcast, which episode and who it's featuring. Usually from there, they go into whatever their platform is. If it's YouTube, if it's Spotify, if it's Apple Music. A lot of people listen to podcasts, so they kind of know like where to go to get that. So yeah, and then also just I used to put links on there, but then I don't know why TikTok started taking that down every time I would put links. So I just put the name of the show and the episode.
Like links in the comments?
Yeah. So like, as soon as they look in the comments, if you're the creator, you're the first comment they'll see. So they'll see like, okay, this is this show, this episode. And I used to put a link and then TikTok started taking down my link. I don't know why.
Interesting. Yeah, I have a theory on that. I think it's because like every platform is competing with every other platform to like keep people on there as long as possible. So it's like,
that's true.
If you're trying to take people off, it's going to ding your performance and reach. That's something I've noticed like on LinkedIn. Like it's super dry that I'm talking about LinkedIn, but like a lot of like network people are on LinkedIn, and I'm noticing it's like if we try and push people anywhere other than LinkedIn, the posts just don't reach. So I think that's a good point.
Wow, yeah, no, that makes so much sense, because I was like, I'm not doing anything wrong, but I mean, yeah, they don't want people to leave. So I get that.
I'd be curious to see it. Like, what would happen if you put like a TikTok link in it, or like a link to it? Or wait, okay. So with TikTok, it's like the video in the comments, right? So it's like, what if you had people go down that rabbit hole where it's like you have a really good clip, then you put like a similar clip or like a part 2 in the comments.
Oh,
just
right.
People going down the rabbit hole.
That's true. That's a good one too. Like, or like if you respond, this also helps too. Is like, if I put up a video and someone has a response to it, sometimes I'll respond to that comment, and that always kind of helps with like the push of the algorithm or engagement.
Are you uploading these short form videos on YouTube too?
I just started.
How are they doing?
I'm not doing it enough. It's so funny. My boyfriend actually works in the YouTube shorts like space. So he's like, you need to keep doing it. Like you need to keep posting. But I'm like, that part I need to get better at. But I'm hearing that that's actually really helpful for YouTube, for the engagement on there.
You mentioned something interesting. You said that you're taking clips from like the past years of producing the show and putting them up on these platforms, and they're driving like new engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I think is really interesting, is like we're all sitting on a gold mine of content if we can repurpose it. Besides the clips, are you repurposing them anywhere else, or what's your content strategy like for Broke Girl Therapy?
I know that like we live in a world where everyone has a content strategy. Like I kind of just like I just put it up, and I think that's why people like tend to like it, because I'm just like I feel like putting this up. Like I try not to think about it, or else like I know I could get in my head, so I try to avoid that. But I literally am just like, ooh, like I always try to make clips that I feel like I'm proud of. And then once I have them, I'm like, ooh, I want to show it off. And then I just like post it. So so I just do that. I don't really have like a super strong strategy. I mean, I do want to start repurposing my like old clips for the YouTube shorts. That's something that I'm going to start doing.
Awesome. So what goes into preparing for a Broke Girl Therapy podcast episode? You have some pretty interesting guests, and the topics are definitely racy, but like what goes into producing the show?
Yeah, so I really love having like a cast on the show. Like people are not only familiar with my stories, but they're familiar with, my friends, because a lot of them are my friends. My boyfriend is on there now, but we kind of like switch off, and I always just, so they get really excited when these people come back and whatnot. And I honestly always just want things to be supernatural. So I always have like a list of topics that I would love to do, but I sit with them beforehand and I'm like, okay, what do you feel like talking about? Like what do you feel like you could really contribute to? And, because I want it to feel like as natural as possible. Like I don't want it to feel like, okay, let's talk about, love languages today, when we don't really care to talk about love languages. Like sometimes we just want to cry, and sometimes we just want to be super lighthearted and talk about, like sex. So I don't know why I'm scared to say the word.
Sex.
Sex. So I really tried to like hang out with them first. I set everything up myself, and I, just kind of just freestyle it. Honestly, I don't, I know a lot of shows love to have structures and segments, and I think it's needed, in several types of shows. But I think what works for me is that it just feels so natural and unplanned. We also just started really engaging with the listeners. So a lot of times now we're calling people and we're answering emails. Yeah. And that's been so much fun to really like hear stories from, people from around the world and just like give unsolicited advice. So it's really been lately all about engaging. So I'll just pick, a few emails that I think me and my guests could really cover. And, we kick it. We have some wine. We have a good time, and I think it's like our moment to just not take anything seriously and just have fun, because life is hard.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of taking things way too seriously.
Me too. So it's my moment to just not, I think when you're working and when, life hits you with certain situations and problems, like we have to like be serious and do what we need to do. But sometimes it's nice to just not try and just be yourself. And I think that's why I loved doing the show for so long, because it's like a place where I could just be myself.
That's awesome. What are you doing to take the listener questions? You mentioned email, but are you using like some kind of like third-party app to capture the voice notes, or how does that work?
I just say, hey, email me. People will email me. I also have like a contact sheet on my website. So I say, if you want to go on my website and fill out the form, go ahead. Or if you want to email me directly, go ahead. Either way, it goes to my email. So whatever is, easier for them. And yeah, and then I have like a section where I'm like, what's your phone number? And if they want me to call them, I prefer like calling them, because I like, it's kind of cool to be like, hey, it's me. And they like freak out, I think it's fun.
Have you ever heard of SpeakPipe?
No.
SpeakPipe is basically like a web app version of voice memo for like iPhone. So it's like you can send people to, like, you can set up a landing page or like embed it on a landing page. And it's like, okay, well, if you want to like send us your questions, go to Broke Girl Therapy /questions. And then you could have a landing page that just has this like glorified like voice memo button on it.
Oh my God.
And people can tap it, record their voice memo, and like directly send it to you.
See, you learn something new every day. That's beautiful about podcasting. Oh my God. Okay. I'm definitely going to start using that. That's amazing.
It's really cool. And I feel like playing the clips is just so much more powerful than just like reading an email. But I think it's cool that you're having people call you too. That's really fun.
Yeah. Sometimes it is fun reading an email because we'll read it in a very dramatic and funny way. So sometimes there is it's funny, but there are moments where I'm like, can y'all just like say it without us trying to read, this email with all these grammar mistakes, but no shade, it's fine.
Totally. Let's go over how you record your episodes. Are you doing them in person? Are you doing them remote? What kind of equipment are you using? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I am doing it mostly in person.
Nice.
I'm going to try to start doing remote, but I prefer to not do it remote as much just because I love the engagement when I'm with them, in person. So mostly in person. I'm going to try to do some virtual, but yeah, I have, my God, I'm not good with names. I have the Shure mics, see right there. And then I have, it's like that Rodecaster mixer. I love that mixer because it has a Bluetooth, and that's why I'm able to call my listeners and their audio is connected to, the mixer, and it all gets, all together. So yeah, that's what I use. For my video, I use the Panasonic G85 with an adapter. From what I've researched, it's the only one that could stay on for an entire episode. So it's been amazing to have. I'm so weird with technical stuff. I'm like, it's this thing, you know what I mean? Like that part, I feel like I've had to really do more research on, but I still am not like so technical with the terminology. I'm like, this mixer
That's a
thing.
good thing, though. That's a good thing, though, because I feel like a lot of people get stuck on the tech and then they get interested in it and they become nerds. Like, that's definitely what happened to me is like, I know everything about the tech, but now it's like I'm weak on the content side. I'm weak on like connecting on a personal level and like creating content that people actually want and enjoy. Yeah. And that's awesome that you're coming at it from sort of the content first perspective.
I'm like, how can I just make this sound good enough? You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like,
you mentioned earlier that you're editing the show too. What's your process like for that?
I always do video first. I kind of get like the timestamps of what is taken out, all that stuff. And this is the thing, I'm not the best at editing. Like I still use GarageBand. I know that I've been doing this for 5 years, and every pod person is like, this is embarrassing stuff. Like, you need to step it up. Like, why are you still using GarageBand? But it's so simple and straightforward to me. And I think the whole charm of my show is that it's like less editing and it feels raw. And that's why I invested on like the microphones and the mixer, because that just makes it sound good already. I don't have to do too much tweaks. I probably should, but I'm the worst advice when it comes to technical stuff. but it's been working, so.
Well, how are you editing the video though? GarageBand is audio, right?
Yeah. I do the video on Final Cut Pro.
And what's your process like for that? Are you using multiple cameras or is it like a static angle?
Yeah, I just use one camera and it's straightforward. And of course, I have lighting to make it, very bright because it's pretty dim in my apartment. Yeah, so it's straight angle. I put the video onto Final Cut. I sync the audio to the video. And then I just, start editing from there and just take out parts that, I want taken out of the show. And then from there, that's where I make the clips. And with the clips, you could see like I have like an individual shot of each person, and that's just like a zoom. I don't do like, any like different angles on a camera. It's the same single shot. I'm just cropping it.
That's smart.
Yeah. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, how many cameras do you have? I'm like, just one. I'm cropping. I'm just cropping.
That's definitely what I recommend people too is like get like a 4K camera if you can, and then just like back it out far and then just like punch in. Because like if you have the full resolution to work with, then you can do like the 1080 punches and it's still like full HD, but you don't have to spend like $8,000 on 3 cameras. It's just like $2,000 on one.
It's not like you're even doing anything fancy. Like they're just sitting there. So it's not like, you need a camera to like follow your every move. So yeah, 100%. I just use one, zoom it out, and then I zoom in, crop, do whatever I need to do just from that. It'd be too much work having 3 different shots. I don't have time.
Yeah, it definitely is. Because then it's like when you have the 3 cameras, then you have to do what's like called a multicam sequence, which is basically, how like you synchronize the audio to the video. You're basically synchronizing 3 videos and like 2 audios, and then like cutting it back and forth, and it's just super time consuming.
And see what angle you want for this certain shot. No. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
keep it simple.
Yeah, less is more, and most of the time people are listening to the podcast versus watching it. The clips are really just for promotional reasons, so.
Totally. Even with like YouTube, what we found is like people will have it open in a different tab. Like the video is important for like first impressions, but no one's like watching it all the way through.
No one at all. They just have it in the background.
I know we talked a lot about the clips and sort of your promotional efforts there, but besides the clips, are you doing anything else like swapping trailers or guesting on different shows? What else are you doing to promote the show?
Yeah, that's the part I will say I am trying to step up is being a part of other people's shows. I think because sometimes I'm really particular, where not because I'm like, oh, trying to keep my brand because I don't really care about that, but I really just want the conversation to feel as natural as possible. So I never like to feel like I'm in an environment where I'm feeling like forced. So yeah, I haven't been a guest on very many, and it's really just I've been relying on TikTok, and again, like I'm still learning on how to grow, and I really seek to be on more podcasts for sure, but I haven't been there yet. But that's the thing, that's the beauty of, like, what I do, I guess. It's just, like, I'm still learning, like, I hate, ever I love giving advice and giving people the knowledge of what I've made mistakes on and what I'm learning and stuff, but there's that's the thing about podcasting is, like, there's just constant ways to learn, and there's no textbook way of, you know, promoting or getting things right. It's just, like, what works for you, what feels natural to you.
Let's turn the conversation over to your experience working with pod people.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're a producer and you help with matchmaking. Could you break down sort of what your day to day looks like?
It's crazy and I love it. So we get several clients coming to us. We are like a full production company, but we're also like a staffing agency, and we provide community resources for our community members. So we provide like networking and events for people, but we also get people jobs. And I actually really am like falling in love with that part as well too. It's like as someone who's been through the ringer with jobs and finding work, like it feels good to get people jobs, especially in a creative space. So we get several clients like Vogue and Wondery and Gimlet and HBO and Netflix who are like, I need to staff. And so we dive into like our community members, our pod people pretty much, and we get people jobs. And I don't know, it's something like getting people work feels so good. So
Right.
and I love it. And I also just learned so much about the different hats and roles that, people play in the industry. Because again, I came from being completely self taught, had no idea what I was doing, to really now learning how everything works.
So if anyone's listening and they want to get involved in the podcast industry, would you say you'd be the person to reach out to?
Yeah, definitely reach out to me. Or if you guys want, you could go to podpeople.com, and there's a survey that you could take to be a part of the community. And someone from our team will reach out to you and, onboard you and give you pretty much all the information and answer any questions that you may have. So it's super easy. It takes like 10 minutes to fill out the survey. And yeah, we had people from like super senior, experience to people who were just like me, who are like, I have a podcast and I love doing this, but I want to like break into the industry, and Pod People has really been such a huge part of my growth. So I would suggest, if you are starting out, definitely, and if you are a senior producer or whatever position, definitely feel free to sign up and be a part of the community.
Are there any special requirements? Like what does the
Nope.
intake look like? No?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's like, yeah, just, we have people who like just graduated college, like I've only interned, so there's no
Wow.
requirements. We just want people who are excited about the podcast industry.
Sweet. Well, I like to close out every show by asking people who their moonshot guest is and why.
Oh yeah, definitely Issa Rae.
Issa
Just
Rae.
Issa Rae. She's not even like a podcaster anyway, but she was, she started out as, making her own mini series on YouTube, and directed, wrote everything, and eventually got picked up by HBO and made the smashing show Insecure. And that's, it's like, I feel like it's like similar content to Broken Therapy, where it's like surviving and dating in LA and just figuring yourself out along the way. And I feel like, obviously hers is scripted, but there's some kind of like, we have like similar love for things. So I would love to have Issa Rae. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for your time today. I know this is going to help a ton of people. Where can people
Thank you.
find more about you online and more about what you do?
Yeah, feel free to check out my website, brokegirltherapy.com. I have all the links to the shows, to YouTube, and my social medias on there. And if you guys want me to answer any of your dating questions or stories or whatnot, you could send those too on my website, brokegirltherapy.com.
And don't forget the TikTok, Broke
Yes, and
Girl Therapy.
TikTok. And TikTok, Broke Girl Therapy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.